Welcome back, you guys. I'm FC. This is Blue Line CV, and today I'm here to bring you another live stream. I've got on two very special guests, and Alex Goldberg and Joe Tweedie. He's gonna come on soon, so he's gonna come on like a little bit later, you guys. So don't worry, Alex is gonna keep us entertained for now. And before I get into anything, of course, got to shout out today's plug, and that's the One Football app. I think it should be popping up right now. Exactly, you guys can see it on screen beside me. Here are some examples of like useful features in which you can use the One Football app. Like I'm constantly using it to find out like who our next opponents are, getting like brief stats on our next opponents too, because it does give you some nuance, some detail. You know, it's quite interesting too, and it just really reflects the app in which it's just so convenient. And that's why I'm constantly calling it a football companion app. So if you guys want to check out for yourselves, you'll see a link in the description below. And now, moving on to our very special guest, and Alex Goldberg. How you doing, man?
I'm good, Nini. How are you, my man?
Very good, very good, very good. If you guys give me 1 second, it looks like my other guest is about to come on. Okay, cool. So how the hell? You know what's really funny? I just realized, how do I okay, I can add someone here. All right, cool. Perfect. But yeah, Alex, man, sorry to just ruin your intro. Like, apologies for that. Yeah, if you want to just reintroduce yourself again.
Sure. I'm Alex Goldberg with the long hair and no barber. And you might know me from Chelsea Twitter, maybe my podcast, The Byline. But chances are, if you know the podcast, you probably know me from Twitter. So, yeah, just happy to be back on another stream with Nini. I don't do videos enough, especially on my channel, but certainly on Nini's channel as well. I probably overbook myself, and I don't want my bad haircut to be seen. So that's why I really stay behind the scenes.
Exactly. And honestly, you guys, if you have not signed up to his Patreon for the podcast, you're missing out on an incredible interview with Demba Ba. It's literally 3 hours long. It goes in depth, so many interesting talking points. You can get some deeper insight behind the scenes in regards to the club. It's like £1. Like $2 is like £1. Yeah, it's like literally nothing. So you guys, honestly, you're missing out if you're not signing up to it. But anyway, let's move on to the first subject. And there's been a lot of talks and interest in regards to Kai Havertz. Now, maybe the cynical part of me is assuming that because the Bundesliga is back, it's the only football we can consume on TV. Maybe that's why people are a bit excited. But Alex, obviously, I know you got your thoughts and opinions. Kai Havertz, is he like one you think could really take us to another level? Or maybe you think we should invest those types of funds in like different areas?
Yeah, I'm very pro Kai Havertz. And it's important for me to say that, like, I'm pro a lot of different players, but it doesn't mean I want all of them. So I'm pro Jadon Sancho, I'm pro Havertz, I'm pro some other players. But that's with the assumption that Chelsea would just zero in on one. So it's not like, oh, wait, Alex, you said you're pro Havertz, you said you're pro Sancho, you said you're pro Osimhen, whatever. Doesn't mean I want all of them, but I have to isolate the player. And when I look at Kai Havertz, I am in favor of Chelsea acquiring him. Now, I'm not getting carried away. I know he's just a candidate, and we'll see how strong the interest is. But on Kai Havertz, why am I pro Kai Havertz? Well, he's a really talented young player. That's a good start. The second point or reason I'd be pro Kai Havertz is his positional versatility. And that's a big one for me, Nini, is right now, Frank has me really feeling the guys who can play multiple spots effectively, efficiently in attack. And it's a huge reason why I've come around on the Hakim Ziyech signing. He can play so many different spots. It's another feather in the cap of someone like Mason Mount, who obviously can play all over the place. But I want the ability for Frank to have to be able to switch between formations. Now, hopefully he won't do as much of that, but nonetheless, I want him to be able to switch formations, but still not be hindered by the switch of formation and by the maybe tweaked personnel. So you have someone like Kai Havertz, and I hear all these people say, but Alex, you love Mason Mount. Well, I don't see Kai Havertz as a real problem for someone like Mason Mount. We've seen Kai Havertz at Leverkusen play all over the place, like as a true CM, a more attacking-minded CM, but as a CM, we've seen him play some 10, although their formation doesn't really have a true 10. We've seen him play kind of as a right forward, so one of those inverted wingers where we've seen actually Mason Mount play. We've seen him play a lot there. And lately, since the Bundesliga returned, we've seen Kai Havertz play striker, center forward, false nine, what have you, but really kind of a striker position. And by the way, he's got some height to him. Is he built like a big, strong striker? No, but he's got some height to him, and he can head the ball in. So it makes you think, like, could he be competition for Tammy or just a starter in that position when Tammy's not playing? Could he play as an attacking CM? Could he play as a 10? Could he play if Frank uses inverted wingers again? Even if Frank doesn't use a back three, maybe he still would have a formation where the wingers are more hugged in. Could he play as one of those hugged in wingers? Yes, 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 yes. Absolutely. And to me, he just adds to the young talent you have. Who does he block? He blocks Ross Barkley, not Mason Mount. He blocks, I don't know who else, of who would be maybe Willian or Pedro's replacement, but he just adds to a really strong group of Tammy Abraham, of course, at striker, Christian Pulisic, Callum Hudson-Odoi, Hakeem Ziyech, and Mason Mount as your attacking-minded players. You add Kai Havertz onto there, and you're building a really attractive foundation of attacking players. So I have my boys, as we all do, but I have to be pro-talent. And just when you look at Kai Havertz, how could I not be pro acquiring someone like that? And from what I hear, it seems like he kind of does have the mentality, the makeup to deal with a move like that. So I'm not going to say who I prefer the most, unless I'm asked, of course, but nonetheless, am I pro Kai Havertz? Yes.
Okay, that's interesting, and it literally perfectly segues into our next guest. Joe, can you hear me? Is everything good?
Hey, Nini. Yeah, sorry, man. I got carried away with a little bit of Call of Duty with people from work. So
it happens sometimes, like
that's good.
Was it a good game? Good game at least. If you're coming on late, good game at least.
It ended well. It started off poorly, but ended well.
Okay, that's what we want to hear. But anyway, I'm sure you've been listening in on what we've been speaking about. Of course, the latest links in regards to Kai Havertz. Of course, Alex Goldberg. Why did I say Alex Goldberg like that? Sorry, I was getting your name and Twitter just mixed up for a second then. But obviously, Alex is speaking. Yeah, of course, Alex is speaking about Havertz's positional versatility.
Yeah,
it's quite useful. Many tactical ways that Lampard can use him. But what are you thinking? Do you think that Havertz may be that type of investment in the player, which is like 90 million? Is he worth that type of investment?
So it's a really, really good question. I think it depends very much where you're going to play him. I think as a wide player, he's looked useful. I think Lampard probably wants to end up playing the 4-3-3 that he played quite a lot at Derby. I think that's probably his end goal. If you're looking at sort of a 4-2-3-1, I think as I don't want to say like a classic number 10, but sort of more of a modern number 10 who's maybe more of a goal threat and certainly someone who can chip in with assists. I think he was, at least the last time I checked, almost at double assists, and I think he's got about 14 goals, 8-9 assists this season. So certainly a player who is as creative as he is a goal scoring threat. So, but for that sort of money, you're looking for a player, for me personally, that is someone who's going to be contributing like 10 goals, 10 assists, probably a season minimum in the league. I think potentially he can get there. I think he's one of the best creative passers I've seen, one of the best like final third players I've seen in a very, very long time in terms of just his vision and his awareness. I think that the comparisons I think people make with Ballack are a little bit lazy, mainly because he's tall, German, and he's been at Leverkusen. But more for me, like someone who's better, let's say, sort of final third and middle third is what I'd say. But I don't think he's going to be one of these players that transitions into like a complete midfield, which I've seen a few people make that suggestion. But I think if you're saying Sancho isn't potentially available for those sorts of numbers, I think maybe Havertz's skill set is a little bit more applicable to the Premier League. He's got a little bit more height. He's great in the air. He's got that sense of timing to runs that I think translates across leagues, not just leagues. I think Germany's a very, very open league from what I've seen. And I think now that people are getting to watch it a lot more often, they're sort of seeing how open some of those games are. So I think he would be an absolutely fantastic signing. And as a 10 or someone who can certainly do a job playing out wide and do a very good job, I should say. But good player. I mean, it'd be a huge amount of money, but I think that's still where transfer fees are trending towards that sort of mark. So, but he'd be one that obviously if you're signing him, you hope that he hits the ground running. But 10 goals and 10 assists a season in the league is certainly something in terms of minimum output what I'd expect.
Yeah, but I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second. Now, like recently over the past few seasons, we've seen young players around his age moving for massive money. I'm talking about João Felix for like 125 mil. Ousmane Dembele, he cost a ton as well. And Jovic himself, he was like, 60 million they spent.
Yep.
And maybe is a possibility that, young players costing this amount of money, they feel like there's an extra pressure on their shoulders to like justify the fee, because these are 3 big money signings, 3 big young talents that a lot of people are guessing are going to be like the next best things in the world. And so far they've all struggled in their for their new clubs. And is this a worry we could have for Kai Havertz?
I think there's 2 things to this that I think are probably important for me. I think one of them is that I know certainly people in football have a suspicion of something exists called the Dortmund bounce, where you have players who are incredibly successful in Dortmund, their style of football, their system, how they play, the league they play in, and then this sort of talent doesn't always translate when they move elsewhere. I'm thinking someone like Mkhitaryan, who had a really, really fantastic season for Dortmund and then moved to United. Yeah. I think he went from like really high goals and assists to like 1 and 4. Dembele, obviously a very, very high profile version of that. And I think the second thing would be the fit of the team. You look at João Felix in terms of what made him successful in Portugal, and then going to Diego Simeone in that system, where you're more likely to see success with a striker profile of like a Diego Costa in his prime, that profile of player versus João Felix. I mean, to me, they're kind of night and day in terms of sort of the sort of quality. So I think if you're going to invest massive money in a young player, I think the first thing you have to look at is whether you feel that their numbers and their output is inflated by the league or maybe the system or team they're playing in. The second thing, you have to be absolutely certain on the fit. There's no point just going out and buying one of the top talents because he's the name and then trying to put him into a Diego Simeone system, for example.
Yeah. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I think obviously Kai too. I think he could suit how we play. Yeah. Recently seen how open the football is in the Bundesliga. I think we all saw that game against Leverkusen where, he scored 2 goals, penalty, and that, the great assist to set up the penalty too, outside of the foot pass. Yeah. Perfect nice way. Yeah. Exactly. Very good pass. It kind of reminds me of like De Bruyne. Like I remember when I saw De Bruyne.
It's a really good shout.
Yeah, clips on YouTube when he was playing for Genk. And just straight away, seeing how he was playing on the counter-attack, just seeing the weight of his passes in the final third and the accuracy and the consistency, like every single time he was playing the right one, his head was up, and I just knew straight away, okay, this guy looks like he's pretty promising. And yeah, I mean, there's no doubt in it that Kai is a very special player. I think, he's got like a real elegance to how he plays, a real composure too. I think obviously now this season, as it's gone on, he's found like his position. And we're starting to see that maybe it's down the right-hand side or playing in the Müller role, or maybe not necessarily the Müller role because he's struggled there this season, but, playing down the right-hand side where he's got the freedom to move in. And for me, this is where like my first issue is, and Alex needs to pick your brain on this, but we've just signed Hakim Ziyech. And if Ziyech's best position is playing on that side and Kaiser's, is that really worth the investment?
I still think it is. Because I still think you need to look long-term. I mean, Ziyech is 27. I still hope he can contribute effectively to the team for 3, maybe more years than that. But I think you have to think realistically. And he's going to be a big part of the team next season. We'll see how successful he is with Chelsea beyond that. But Kai Havertz, that's a whole different profile. Age-wise, he's somebody that ideally you'd project at the club for a long, long time. And listen, I hate when people say, oh, well, City does it. City has 3 all-stars in every position. I mean, it's a ridiculous way to just say, hey, it's an easy way to build a team. Just do what City does. That's just a lot easier said than done. But nonetheless, the reason why I'm not too scared about maybe some overlaps with people like Havertz and Ziyech and Mount and maybe Loftus-Cheek if he's in the mix, but I hope he is, and Pulisic, Hudson-Odoi, is because of the positional versatility. They're not direct either-ors. You can have games where you can have a few of them, people who you might think right away they're all the same position, but you can have lineups where you have a Mount, a Ziyech, and a Havertz, depending on the rest of the players you have out there. Maybe it's a game where you don't have a Pulisic and or a Hudson-Odoi out there. Just gives Frank so many options, and with as many competitions as Chelsea aspire to be in, and they should be in as many competitions as possible next season anyway, there are going to be plenty of opportunities for Frank to give a crap load of starts to all of those guys. And, the only thing he has to worry about is the social dynamic of all of that. all of those guys I just mentioned, Loftus-Cheek, Pulisic,
Yeah.
Hudson-Odoi, Mount, Havertz, and Ziyech, they will want a good amount of starts. But I still think the club is constructed right now, vibe-wise, energy-wise, direction-wise, where there's not going to be hostility if one guy's a little gypped. It's going to be more motivating. I think depending on the manager you have and the vibe and feeling of the club, maybe that could backfire. But in this situation, I feel like those players will be kind of all in, and it'll be more of a healthy competition. So
Yeah.
I think what you bring up is a great point because, yeah, is he as needed, especially for that investment since we have Ziyech? But I think because of the position, I hate to be so redundant, but because of the positional versatility, I don't worry about that as much.
Okay, I'm going to continue to play devil's advocate because I remember a period during the start of this decade, Mourinho, he's hired. And during that time, we have a lot of promising young attacking players. And your Oscar, who signs as a 19-year-old, De Bruyne, similar age, Eden Hazard's like 2 years older. Players like, Moses, etc. Salah, Salah, we can't forget them too. And we had a situation where, due to the intense competition, it forced away maybe two players maybe two of the best players in the Premier League, in Salah and De Bruyne, who really you're feeling should be playing for us still and should never have left. Would we not reignite a similar situation where the over competition, because these are players that are young. I think there's a difference between like young guys under 23 and guys who are like 25, 26 plus, because they've been playing this game for a while. They know how things work. They're more content, I guess. But when you're young, you need that game time. You need that consistency to really grow and improve. And if you're a young player coming from us, then you got that ambition to be the best you can be. So is there a possibility that we could suffer because maybe competition in that sense doesn't necessarily work out how we think it does?
I mean, I'll just quickly say, and I'm almost stealing my take from people I've interviewed in the past that have been part of that team. But I'll just say that their answer would be times were different. Times were different in terms of Jose was asked to pretty much straight up win the league, and that's obviously the goal for Lampard. But it's a different time for the club, and I think once again, the separation that Liverpool and Manchester City have right now actually benefits Chelsea long term because Frank can give more equal game time to all those guys, where Jose couldn't give equal time to Salah, De Bruyne, Schürrle, Willian. Once Jose kind of realized, well, Salah and De Bruyne are just not ready. They might have the ability, but they are not ready. He couldn't really have them be even key figures of the team. So it was a situation where he couldn't balance it out. With Frank, I think it's a different situation. Sure, he wants to get third place. I mean, ideally, he wants to win the league. But realistically, he'd love third place next season. He'd love to go far in every competition. He'd love to see progression. But playing all of those guys equally actually will help with that and help long term. So I think the status of the club is the reason why I don't fear it as much.
I hear that, but I mean, I don't know. Sometimes like the context of a season does, take place. Let's say you're in like a successful period where, let's say the team you've used in the past 3 games has won each game. And then you don't want to really break that momentum, or let's say you've got a tough run of games coming up, or, there's so much context that could happen. That could maybe mean the manager is prioritizing other players for a period of time compared to the other young ones. And just going back to that De Bruyne, Oscar point I was making, I guess we'd all admit that, if we could turn back time, and with hindsight especially, you'd sacrifice Oscar for De Bruyne every single time. And you probably do the same thing with for Salah and Andre Schürrle too. And I mean,
probably, maybe. Yeah.
I'm gonna be diplomatic and stick with Schürrle, but I'm just thinking, these 2 players ended up becoming world class, and the other ones, weren't. And there's so many articles and interviews in regards to the times the players faced during that period, where even in training it just wasn't fair to. And obviously once that mentality shift starts to affect a player, you're going to have an unhappy one. And I'm saying if there's unnecessary competition, where me personally, I feel like if you want someone young to be the best they can be, you need to really give them that TLC, that love and care. You have to invest in them and use them. That's the reason why guys like your De Bruyne's moved on and became better, and your Salahs, etc. And maybe that's why your Oscars and Schürrles didn't maybe reach those same heights too. So Joe, I'm just gonna let you obviously I definitely want to hear your thoughts and opinions. Like, I wonder what your rebuttal is going to be.
Not too strong. I mean, I think the thing I would start with is that I can see next season there being, let's say, in terms of the structure and the formation and the tactics we play, at most there will be 3 creative midfielders on the pitch at one time. Probably least there'll be 2 wingers. So if you have Ziyech, if you have Pulisic, you've got Hudson-Odoi, and then let's say you add Havertz. I still think that Lampard sees Mason Mount slightly deeper, and I think actually his best games this season have come when he's been more of a true central midfielder. So someone who can play as like a defensive 10, like that insane pressing game that he has and score and all that sort of stuff. But I think the withdrawal role. So if you've got 4 guys going to 3, going to 2, I think over the course of the season, Chelsea's ambition is always to be playing 45, 50 games a season. Yeah. With injuries we've seen to Hudson-Odoi and just injuries in general, and then form and thing like that, I think you need at least 4 good options to cover in those positions. And again, you've got Mount who could probably shift in there. You could probably put Ruben as a 10 if you really wanted to. But to have that flexibility of the 4, and that's what I think someone like Havertz would give you, is someone who can be a 10, play on the right, probably even do a job on the left-hand side if you really needed to. But you have genuine wingers. You have people who can play as a 10. And I don't think it's really going to be as comparable, I think, as what we've seen historically. I think both Willian and Pedro will be moving on. There's no kind of senior resistance or senior figures there. It's going to be, for me personally, a meritocracy on who's playing best. You know, we've already seen Lampard kind of regularly make those comments about, you know, people who are playing well in training are going to get opportunities. So I think that we'll see, you know, the players who respond to the competition best will be the ones that will get the opportunities. But then I think there'll be plenty of opportunities for everyone, you know, for in the Champions League again, which it looks like that's another really 6 high quality games in the Champions League. So already with that and plus 2, 2 league games, so 38, 44. So we're already playing 46 games in the season without going far into the League Cup or the Champions League or the FA Cup. So you know, there's no way that I think we're going to see a bias towards certain players or players playing super regularly, unless someone really breaks out and becomes, you know, sort of the level of player that Chelsea are hoping that one of them becomes. But I don't know, I'm not as worried, I think, with this management group as I would have been with a Mourinho or pretty much anyone else. I think that's kind of what it will boil down to, is I think everyone will get their opportunity. You know, even how, you know, I mean, Pedro came back into the team towards the end of the season. Many people had, including myself, probably had written him off early part of the season, you know, not really taking part, not being seen as a viable member. As soon as there's a few injuries and all this sort of stuff hits, and all of a sudden now Pedro's back in the team and fixture and playing well, I think that, you know, you'll see more of that with younger players. And I think in kind of the mould of the way that this club is being built is to have a younger core of players, where I think having the rotational kind of aspect of play, so people coming in and out of the side and sort of moving in as being a little bit more fluid, rather than these kind of silos and sort of these kind of structure players that we've had previously who don't move. I think we'll see more of that in the future. But I completely agree with Alex. I think that it's a little bit of a projection on his playing staff, because we don't know how they'll act when they've got better players, or a larger group or a larger pool of better players to pick from. But I think certainly from everything that Lampard has said and everything that he's kind of conveyed in press conferences, that I think the best players will play. But I still think that there will be plenty of opportunities for everyone to impress over the course of the season. Could be, again, you know, even Ziyech comes in and, you know, maybe takes a little while to adjust, while Pulisic is hitting, you know, playing out of his skin, and Hudson-Odoi maybe sort of gets back to form or whatever. And then Ziyech is the guy who's, you know, from January he's adjusted, and now he's sort of the main focal point. I think it will be flexible through the season. And I think it will be done on form and merit, which is, you know, for a Chelsea team, probably not something we've seen often. But you know, I think it's a lot of confidence in Lampard's ability to do that. But yeah, it's going to be, I think, something that will unfold. But I think that the key thing for me, and sort of not kind of double backing on myself here, but you know, Lampard with a bigger pool of better talent, I think will be interesting to see how he manages that. I think he'll rotate. I think that he will give people opportunities, but obviously it's difficult to project.
Yeah, I think. I mean, you know, I've already been playing like devil's advocate. Let's remember that. But yeah, of course, Havertz is. Yeah, he's a very special player, and you know, Lampard is naturally going to rotate the team a ton. Like, you know, of course, these guys are heavily influenced like during their times with the academy. And those teams are constantly getting rotated, like nearly every single time. And I just think with modern day football now, it's not about having like your set 11 and then you've got like your backup players for them. Due to just how intense football is now, you have to constantly run and you have to be so fit. That type of intensity throughout the course of a season just isn't feasible for using like 111. So, I can imagine
subs rules coming in as well, Nini.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's going to mean that people on the bench are probably going to play more minutes, I would imagine.
Yeah. I think it's like up to 5 now.
So actually the actual composition of the bench now actually makes a bit of difference.
Yes, that just brings up a completely different.
Me, as you were saying.
Yeah, and I can't believe everyone's forgotten that, because that's a very like key thing that opens up a lot of doors now. 5 subs, that could be interesting. I wonder how like managers would use that tactically. They just waste so much time, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would just think, you have some designated players that just go balls to the wall for 70 minutes.
It might be like that, or just like every minute in the 80th minute, you're just bringing on a new sub every like 2 minutes or something.
Right.
So waste as much time.
With that said, I still feel like Mount will be playing 90 minutes, but everyone else,
I'm just hoping next season Mount gets a little bit of a rest. I think this season he wasn't supposed to play so many games. I think what really affected him in the end was that he didn't have a set position. Of course, certain games where he has played deeper, or if he has the right personnel in the final thirds, he has shined. But I don't know. I just think that my issue with Mount is that obviously playing that Muller role it takes a lot of time and experience. So the fact that Lampard thinks he can do something there tells you just how good Mason's footballing brain is. But I just think the rest of the team has never ever found him. I think if you're going to use a player like that, then you have to obviously look to play him in those certain areas. And I never saw like a Willian or a Pulisic or like a Jorginho like finding Mason like between the lines like that. So I think it was no surprise by his struggle at time so much. But of course, I think our final verdicts on Kai Havertz, starting with you, Alex. If you could sign him, would you sign him for this window?
Yeah, I'll take away all the other context, of course, any other player, and I'll just say yes, I would. Definitely.
Okay, and obviously, Joe, like, what are you saying? Like, if you had to sign Kai, it's either one guy that you want us to bring in.
I think both in terms of him being like realistic, and also in terms of what I think he potentially could be. Certainly, under Frank Lampard, you're talking about someone who has some very similar traits to Lampard as well. He, for me, would be an absolutely great acquisition. It's all about improving the overall talent level within the squad, I think, for certainly the next 2 years. So, it could be, again, I think your sort of devil advocate point earlier was interesting, that, there could be some players out of joint if you bring in a £90 million player. But Chelsea want to get back to the level where they were, a couple of years ago, where teams feared them in Europe and didn't come to Stamford Bridge and, win comfortably and just sort of jog on to the next game. They want to increase the quality, and Havertz, for me, is a really big step back in that direction. And I also think it's a little bit of a statement signing as well. And probably validates kind of Lampard's pull as the guy that a lot of young players now want to go and play for.
Yep, yeah, that's a great point. I just want to say, would we see Chelsea making that type of a signing with Conte or Sarri at the helm? I don't think so.
Oh, no, can you imagine going to play for Sarri?
Who wants to play for them? That's exactly. I mean, Ziyech said it himself. Be one phone call with Frank, that was it to sign. Instantly, that was it. So, yeah, I always knew our style of football was constantly costing us signing some really special players. But I don't even want to get started with that. I think we should move on to the next talking point. And obviously, news came out today that it's looking like Jeremie Boga, he won't be. We're not going to be signing back. Basically, he's going to be. He'll still be with Sassuolo. I think we're going to negotiate for a sell-on clause or something like that. So it looks like Jeremie's going. And again, I guess this implies that maybe an attacking player of some kind is going to be signed, or we are going to go after them. Because I guess to really let Boga go this early, maybe... Because I was always assuming, you guys, that, okay, let's say we're trying to target a Sancho or a Kai, and then we can't sign him, and he's our backup option, and we just really stall things out. But I guess... maybe it doesn't work like that.
Well, I'll just say that I think the player's will is a huge factor here. I know it gets advertised as Chelsea choosing not to use the buyback clause, but I think Jeremie Boga, after the season he's had at Sassuolo, wants to continue to be pretty much a guaranteed starter where he goes. And I know that technically you could say what we just said for Havertz, right? And put Boga in that equation and say, well, Boga, we're playing in all these competitions, you'll still get plenty of playing time. But for him, I think, his career has not necessarily been the upward trajectory that many thought it would be way back when he was maybe the most talented player in the Chelsea academy. So now that he has grasped this trajectory, this great momentum he has in Serie A, and by the way, he's a very rare player in Serie A. And I've talked with David Almoyal a lot about that, who's from the Di Marzio camp. Like, he's a very rare player in Serie A. They don't see many players like him. And he has a great opportunity right now to stay in that league, probably move to a team like Napoli, who are really highly rumored to be interested in him. And he's going from it's an in-league acquisition where he can go to a higher profile club and continue that momentum. So I just think I'm probably looking at it more from Boga's point of view, but Boga's point of view still factors into what Chelsea wants to do. And from Boga's point of view, I get it. From a sentimental standpoint, I mean, I would love Boga back at the club, and he would just add to the outrageous original academy talent that we already have. But I do get it.
Yeah, I'm hoping maybe if that's going to be the case, we are going to see him sign for like an Atalanta. I think Napoli might have to reinvest a lot, and I'm not too sure they're going to sign some great players for next season. I don't know, with like Koulibaly leaving, I don't think it's the best move for him personally. I think Atalanta, they're scoring goals for fun. I think that would be really fun to see him playing alongside Gomez and, Zapata and all these guys.
Look at someone like Lorenzo Insigne, who's really fallen off. Lorenzo has really fallen off. Callejon is going to be leaving. I'm almost positive of that. They did re-sign Mertens, but still, I mean, he's in the back nine of his career.
Yeah.
Milik could be leaving. Lozano did not.
So why sign for a sinking ship? If they're selling their best players, you're thinking, okay, if I'm leaving Sassuolo, I want to play at a higher level. Atalanta, that could be the go-to team. I can just imagine them having fun.
But Nini, at Atalanta, you could have a similar problem that he would have at Chelsea, where Atalanta, he's not a shoo-in to start for them. He's a really good young player that should ideally start for a team like that. But Atalanta right now have a stacked attacking unit. So I actually think there's more of an opening for him at Napoli. I know that sounds crazy, but that's what I believe.
Yeah, I definitely agree. But I'm just thinking, just in terms of the aesthetic, for the football,
Sure.
I think I see him getting decent game time there. But obviously, Joe, what are you thinking? This is the best move to make in the market to let Boga leave so soon, or maybe was there a way to stall this deal or something?
I think that potentially, if Boga goes to Atalanta or Napoli or any of the other sort of bigger Italian sides rumored in. Taking him, and he does well. I think that this is one that Chelsea potentially look back on and regret somewhat, because I think that his style of play, certainly from someone I've watched probably pretty intensely from his academy days to probably this season, I'd say is the first one where he's had a bit of stability. He obviously went to Sassuolo last season, but I mean the real sort of stable, being in a sort of similar system and actually having a little bit of a feel for those around him for more than a season under his belt. I think he was, was he 8 goals and 4 assists or something this season, something like that?
Yeah, right around that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so he's worth a goal every other game from not playing for one of the better sides in Italy, and certainly I think that is something that I would maybe have looked at as an option. I think that certainly in these kind of obviously slightly unusual times that we're living in, that spending an inordinate amount of money on a player might look probably a little bit bad from a PR perspective and sort of an optics perspective to go and spend a 90 million or 100 million pound on a player when there's lots of things that other people would probably draw attention to that money could be spent on. So with that kind of in mind, I felt that maybe Boga was going to be a little bit more of a not a shoe-in to come back, but maybe certainly a bit more of an option. I think he gives you a lot from sort of the left-hand side, that sort of ability to cut in and very creative. Obviously, we know he's a fantastic dribbler, but he's adding goals to this game as well. So for me, I would have looked to brought him back and at least given him a season in the squad to see sort of where he kind of stacks up. If he could have gone on and kicked on, obviously it would have been a fantastic bargain signing. If not, you can probably still sell him to an Italian club for a pretty significant fee. But I think maybe they've just taken a decision that they don't particularly want to mess him around. And I think as Alex alluded to as well, if the player doesn't have interest in coming back, then I mean, what's the point of just agitating someone for no reason? Just to earn a little bit more money. I think negotiating a sell-on fee probably is better. It's probably better than what Chelsea will get from Sassuolo sort of buying out that fee that they have. So, I mean, if it's that they make a a little bit of money on the signing, and then Boga goes and does well elsewhere, then it's just one of those that they have to, just sort of kind of live and die by, sort of if he does kick on. But yeah. I think he's super talented still. I think just starting to find his feet in adult football, which is pretty terrifying, really, to think how young he is still, really, in terms of how long he's been, at least on our radars as Chelsea fans. So it'll be nice to see him, I think, get a bit of consistency, and again moving to a better team, and nice to see him do well. But I can see where Chelsea are coming from if he's not in the sort of plans, and I think it'll probably also allude to the fact that maybe Chelsea are aiming higher in terms of looking at players that they want to sign. And to me, it's all positive, because I think, Nini and I often speak about not wanting to mess around the careers of young players and sort of letting them get on with it if you don't have genuine interest. So rather than that, go out and then go and find a player that you actually want to bring in and actually want to want to sign.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is probably the best move for Boga. He needs to play consistently. I think that's what's really helped him this season, is that as it's gone on, he's become a first-team player week in, week out, and that confidence has really helped him. I mean, the types of goals he's scoring aren't just your typical, lucky tap-ins inside the box. I mean, this guy is... That's what I mean. The very definition of the word. I mean, he's single-handedly creating these opportunities for himself, and then having the skill at the end, the end product at the end, to then turn that into an assist or a goal. Playing for a team like Sassuolo, I think is really impressive, and I think as a business move, this makes the best sense. Sign for another team that's like a step up, perform there for a season or two. There could be slots available, and by then he'll be 24, 25 years old. So, he's still got a long way to go, and it'll be really exciting to see what he does. But I now want to move on to a player that has been out for a while. I feel like some people are starting to sleep on him a bit. There's been some doubts in regards to whether he's going to have that same physical peakness that actually he's never had a physical peak. Let's keep it real. I'm talking about Loftus Cheek, and honestly, he is literally the definition of a new signing. Once the season does recommence, he's going to be a massive weapon. So, Alex, how are you feeling about Ruben? Do you think that, obviously now Kante's not going to be here, that does free up a slot, makes things a bit easier. But do we feel like maybe players like a Mason or Kovacic need to watch their backs?
Before I answer that, as you know, this will be my last answer, unfortunately, so I will do a very stylish dip out at the end of this answer. But now getting to this question, Mason and Kovacic watching their backs. I mean, no, and I more say that because as much as we are now hopeful for Loftus Cheek with the Conte exit, well, not exit, but exit for the rest of the season in play, as much as we are hopeful that Loftus Cheek, who's now really far removed from last year's serious injury, should now just be able to fully slide in, I think he's actually the one that didn't benefit from this break in football. On one hand, you say, yes, like I just said, he's now extra far removed from that awful injury, but he was the one who needed the matches. He was the one who needed to actually play in order to gain match fitness. Frank talked about it pretty early on in the pandemic, but as I've kind of spoken to people a little bit later in this pandemic, they've kind of said, yeah, that still kind of remains the same. Sure, Loftus Cheek is fit. I'm sure he'll be available. As Joe points out, the 5 subs certainly makes it likely that we see Loftus Cheek, especially with a congested schedule, every game. So I think that's great. But I don't think you're going to see him be a full-on starter, or even if he had let's say he had a good bench appearance in that first game back. I don't think Frank's going to get seduced and then put him in as a starter the next game. I still think, and I know it's a little frustrating for some people to hear, but I still think it's more about the long term with Loftus Cheek. I still think he's going to be managed to a certain degree for the rest of this 19-20 season. Once again, there's a congested schedule, so even if he really hit on and he was playing really well, I don't think you're going to see him start midweek and then at the weekend. So it's great that he's in the mix. I think that it can only be a good thing being further removed from that injury, but he needed to play matches. He needs actual match fitness, and the only way to get match fitness is to play matches. So I think he just adds Nini to the weapons that Chelsea will have. But if you have hopes of all of a sudden seeing this brand new side in 1920 with Loftus Cheek as a key dominant figure, I think you're getting a little carried away there. I think the club, first and foremost, is still making sure they manage Ruben, at least for the time being. So that's my answer.
Okay.
And love to all. Joe, good to speak with you, even though it was brief. Nini, thanks for having me on.
Of course, man.
Sorry I have to dip out, but thank you for watching.
Cool.
And I'm out.
Take care, Alex.
Thanks, man.
Right.
Take care.
Cheers, Joe. Bye, Nini.
See you later, man. Yeah, Joe, man, I'm basically hoping that you're going to completely disagree with everything Alex just said. And you're going to be telling us why Ruben is going to be fit for the start of the season.
So, I mean, I think certainly from maybe speaking with people that are linked with him, both in the club and certainly agents, that he's pretty far along now in terms of his journey. Yes, there is a huge difference between someone being able to run around for a bit and then sort of
like you see the area where Ruben receives the ball, you know,
However,
the last player we had that could consistently bring that skill was Eden Hazard.
I think also
look, confident stepping up with the ball, carrying it forwards, a midfield player that can beat his man as well. This is why he's such a hard player to play against.
You know, half an hour here, 20 minutes there to just get him going. But I think this is a guy who had a little bit of a breakout season under Sarri, even under sort of fits and starts. And I think people forget that, you know, he had 10 goals and 5 assists last season. That's almost, 20 sort of goal contributions overall from barely playing, I think, just under 2,000 minutes, which, you know, it's not a huge amount of football, really, when you think about sort of the kind of how well he was playing. So I think that I would say probably so many times this season we've seen midfield lineups from us that just don't have any kind of goal threat whatsoever, where you've got Kova, Kante, Jorginho. Some games they don't even manage a single shot on target. And for me, it's you know, we're not a team that has this kind of all singing, all dancing front three who are going to score 20, 25 goals each and, you know, all rack up assists. It's a pretty kind of team-oriented sort of build-up or sort of set of players that we have at the moment. So I think adding in someone like Loftus-Cheek, who is capable of scoring, you know, and also just, you know, once he sort of gets up to speed, he has always posed people the biggest problem in the world, which is, you know, in a kind of an era of football which is defined by passing and sort of movement, which is, you know, sort of transitioned away from sort of different styles of football. How do you defend someone who is 6'3", 6'4", who can run with the ball at the speed that Ruben does through midfield? I think those problems that he creates, certainly what we saw under Sarri last season, are things that Lampard has definitely been missing in games. You know, just that little bit of spark and the ability to beat players and roll them. And we know how good his feet is. We know how good he was starting to look in the final third. So I think just the fact that he is a genuine goal threat, I think he is certainly capable of getting 10 goals a season, every season. But obviously it's a big thing for him now to sort of be fit and sort of play a bit more consistently and regularly in terms of how he's playing. But I would say, in terms of how he's going to be used, you know, if this season is restarted and all the sort of caveats in place, I do think he's a little bit further along than what some people think.
Yeah.
I don't think he is super far away from being match fit. But, you know, from Ruben, in terms of how he plays, he does take a little bit of time to get up to speed, a couple of games to sort of get his, you know, kind of almost feel for the game back. But once that sort of is out of the way, I think that he's going to be a huge bonus towards the end of the season. Certainly, I mean, even if it's just for his physicality alone, I think we've seen too many games this season where, you know, we have a combined midfield with the height of about 4 foot. I mean, it's, you know, it's not all about pace and power and size and things of that nature, but you do need someone in that midfield that can be a bit commanding and can retain the ball, and can sort of put themselves about a bit. And I think he offers that more than anyone else as well. So, I mean, I would be hopeful, Nini. I'd say I think there is a chance that we see him before the end of the season. He may not sort of come in and start straight away. I think he'll be eased in just because of what he gives Lampard, certainly in the terms of his ability to score, but also ability to create, and then just that physicality. And again, I mean, if you've got Kovacic kind of playing with you know, the sort of form he's playing at the moment, but with less responsibility in the final third, so him sort of doing more of the transitional of the play from defense
role or something,
exactly. Yeah, if you've got him doing that and not having to. You know, the reason I'm critical of him is that I think for someone as talented as Kova, you know, there's barely any end product in the final third from him. And this is a guy who has got so much ability. If you take away that responsibility from him and just let him focus on what he's good at, the defensive bit and the sort of middle part of the pitch, let Ruben have a bit more freedom. I mean, I think that's a really potent combination of players. Both can dribble, both can pass, but you're taking away that kind of final third emphasis from Kova and putting it onto Ruben and let Ruben have that. You know, have that kind of role in the team. So, I mean, I'd be very excited to see that, especially if you've got Gilmour behind them as well. It'd be very interesting to see how quickly they can play.
That'll be fun.
It'd be great. Be great fun to watch.
Yeah. I mean, that's good to hear. I think a lot of people have been just automatically assuming that Ruben's fitness is just so poor and low that he's going to be at like a huge disadvantage or something. I wanted to ask you, obviously the players have been off for like more than 2 months, which is like what, double preseason. So I can't imagine anyone has like the fitness advantage right now. Yeah, I mean, sure, they're looking after themselves during the off season, but you know, as Emerson said in an interview today, like that sharpness isn't there. Like seeing the movement of the ball isn't the same. Like obviously being away for a while, it seems like everyone's quite rusty. So if that's the case and everyone's like back on zero, is there a possibility that maybe Ruben has a chance of even playing games and starting other people?
That's certainly possible. I think probably one of the scary things about this kind of restart for me is the sort of the lack of overall conditioning that the players have, and you know, I'm fairly certain that every single Premier League player, you could put them on the pitch and they could run around for 90 minutes. You know, they're all incredible peak athletes, but I think we both know there's a huge difference between, you know, dropping someone in kind of cold, as you say, without really having a pre-season, just doing a bit of running on a treadmill or going on a bike, and then having to sort of perform all the different movement patterns that you would as a footballer. So I think maybe that's what does even things out for him somewhat. You know, maybe he, as you say, he doesn't have that sort of base level of match sharpness, but then, so, you know, nobody else does, because nobody's really kicked the ball for 2 months. So I think, again, potentially that does even things out for him. I would still say probably I would expect maybe 2-3 games where he's sort of coming in off the bench. But if he's progressing well in training, and he seems to be, at least sort of in the photos I've seen on the, you know, the official website, in terms of his like conditioning, like both his legs are kind of back to sort of the size that they were before. I think people were concerned that I think one of his calves had almost like completely disappeared. So I think he's actually back to looking like sort of the profile player that we remember. And if he's in training, then hopefully, as you say, he's going to be at least on the same sort of keel as others, and hopefully that match sharpness comes. But yeah, I mean, 2 months not kicking a ball in an 11-a-side game, you know, it doesn't matter who you are. Everything will be back to zero for most people.
And I think we've seen with like the restart too in the Bundesliga. It seems like every time in the first half, it's especially sloppy. The game doesn't really pick off until like the second half. I mean, take off till the second half. And I'm just imagining that the football to not be too great when the Premier League does restart again. So maybe you know, things might be a little bit easier. But you know, of course, we've heard a lot of like great things about Ruben and his mentality. Ole Einar has some kind words to say on like some Instagram thing he did. And I think one thing about Ruben is his like dedication and mentality to really just get back to peak fitness. Peak fitness. And I think he told me that he's been really like praised a lot behind the scenes for his dedication to get back fully fit. Yeah,
he's I think because he has, I think certainly when he plays, you know, there's a little bit of a kind of a Ballack-esque, you know, sort of how he runs and how he kind of carries himself, that people assume, not that he's like laid back or whatever, but it doesn't work, but he is certainly talking to people in, you know, who've been working with him in his rehab. He is probably one of the most committed players in terms of getting back to fitness, and it kind of is one of the things that makes you root for him a bit more. You know, I think a lot of certainly younger players maybe take their talent a little bit for granted at times, and maybe don't focus as much on their rehab or some of the kind of the work that surrounds being a footballer. You know, your kind of conditioning and strength training, all this sort of stuff that they should be doing. Some of them maybe don't take it seriously, but I think Ruben has kind of shown both the sort of the mental side of things. He's had a really bad injury and coming back from it, but also just a seriousness with which he's rehabbed. He hasn't rushed things. He's had setbacks because he's tried to push himself a little bit too much, which is, again, you know, there are downsides, but I also kind of respect the attitude that he wanted to get back and play, and he was kind of trying to sort of push himself towards that. But I think the more sort of anecdotes that you hear about him inside the club, how he is, and just sort of the kind of person he is, you know, he to me screams like a future captain of the club. He has the respect and the sort of commands respect for all the players, certainly the coaching staff and people who work with him as well. So just a top professional. I would hope certainly, you know, the younger guys in the academy, you know, the sort of the 18s group now, so your Tinos, your Brojas, etc., are looking at Ruben as sort of a reference point. But this is how I prepare. This is what I need to do to get to that next level. Because you know, he's had a bit of injury bug and he's had the injury problems, but you know, you cannot kind of fault his commitment to training, to rehab, to preparing himself. And I think hopefully some of that gets translated to some of this younger group.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the perfect role model, and it's really turning into like the Ruben Loftus Cheek like fan show right now. But it's like completely like in awe right now. We need to like calm down a bit. But I think this Ruben, I think when he does come, I'm going to be happy to see there being like a goal threat from midfield. I understand that, people are looking at your Jorginhos and your covers. I personally feel like Ruben can do that counter-pressing job because, when he's going in for a tackle, he's winning that 9 times out of 10 because who's going to get the ball off him, And I'm looking at the defensive work of like our other midfield players, apart from Kante. I wouldn't say they're on like a completely different defensive level. Yeah, of course, when it comes to reading like interceptions, etc. But in general, their general reading of the play, how many times we see runners in behind our midfield and how many times do teams exploit us between the lines? It happens time and time again. That I just feel maybe having the addition of a goal threat negates that lack of, defensive strength.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think certainly what people maybe who didn't watch him at Palace are kind of missing is that certainly at Palace he was tasked with being a box-to-box player.
Yeah.
And he played it very well. I mean, he got into the World Cup squad off the back of the performances he'd been in at Palace. I remember he had a fantastic game against City. He was fantastic against Liverpool for Palace. And this was sort of playing in a slightly more traditional or withdrawn midfield role. People have seen him come to Chelsea and he's played more like a number 10 or at a very, very attacking number 8 at times. And that's sort of been the stuff that's asked of him. But, you only have to look at some of his earlier performances for Chelsea when he was playing in a 4-2-3-1. I remember that we were playing Liverpool and within the first 30 seconds, he absolutely hammered Coutinho in a tackle. And Coutinho sort of didn't really fancy coming near him for the rest of the game. But, he's never going to be a player that is going to like Mason Mount, like the Energizer Bunny. He's not going to have that engine or capacity to run. But in terms of physicality, in terms of like being efficient with his defensive work, I think in that position when he's playing the pivot, he's fantastic. And as you say, we lack. It's all right intercepting the ball and pinching the ball, but sometimes you have to have someone in there who can just win tackles.
Yeah.
And I know that we both seen certainly when he was younger, Palace, and there's some notable kind of times at Chelsea where he will go in and win the ball. And I think again sometimes when teams play us, there's no respect of any kind of physical element that we have in midfield. And it's all right having all these technical players and all these wonderful passers, but if you've got Jordan Henderson who can just run for 90 minutes and will just run around you and run through you, then it doesn't really matter, does it? If you're letting someone as basic as Henderson sort of dictate the game because he's a bit stronger and he can run faster, then it kind of negates all of the technical stuff. So we have missed physicality, and I think that he played at least loads of times. I saw him in the academy playing as a number 6 at Chelsea, so one of the holding players. It'd be interesting to see because I think Lampard certainly has alluded to in press conferences that he thinks Ruben can play there. And again, I think if you had him, and again, you could put someone a bit more athletic next to him if you really want like a presser or someone who's going to be more of kind of sideline to sideline. But I think he gives you a nice physical option. Plus, he gets the ball deep. He's got that ability to carry, and he doesn't have to pass the break lines. He can just run past people and run through them.
Exactly.
It's a completely different threat.
Exactly. It's just like he's so hard to contain. We saw that during the end spell during Sarri's season, and I feel like that presence in midfield, that authority. I feel like we missed that authority in midfield at times. I think Ruben does provide that. I think because he hasn't played as many games, I think that's why he's become prone to like a lot of I wouldn't say slander. Slander is a strong words, but a lot of what is the word I'm looking for? God's sake. I think people are just getting a bit too ahead of themselves, making a lot of assumptions in regards to things like he's awful defensively.
Yeah.
I mean, has he even played enough games to really even like judge all angles of the player?
He's been playing as a number 10 for like almost exclusively at his time as Chelsea. I mean, you don't see them going back and looking at Juan Mata going, "Oh, Juan Mata didn't win any tackles." I mean, it's a bit strange. I mean, I've just got some stats up here. So last season, he for Chelsea, as a 10 number 8, and bearing in mind he didn't play that often, he won 28 out of 32 tackles, which is nuts. When you think, I mean, people in our team at the moment don't win 20, 25, 30% of their tackles. He's won nearly every tackle he's got into.
Exactly. That's because when he's winning that ball in the final third, he's winning that ball with easily. You can't get near him. We saw what he did to Declan Rice too. We've seen the evidence time and time again. So this will give us like another free kicks all the time, which we don't get enough of, I think, in the final third. Especially in good areas too. Ruben wins them in good areas when he's getting brought down, and whenever he's on the ball, he's proactive. He's attacking the spaces. He's carrying it. He's providing that bit of invention and threat that I think that's what separates the top 4 teams from the rest. So honestly, I think when he comes back, we're guaranteed to secure our position. And I'm looking forward to seeing what Lampard is going to do formation-wise. I think we're all assuming that we're going to see three-man midfields. I think that makes a lot of sense. But let's say Gilmour, Kovacic, and Ruben.
It's a really, really nice balance.
Very good balance.
Yeah.
Gilmour has been unbelievable too. Just playing those passes in between the lines. Cover, I feel, he's not good in the final thirds. I think he's much better around the halfway line. I think him playing that Kante role where he has to be aggressive and press, I think that suits him.
Yeah. I think that that midfield three certainly, for me, it has a bit of everything. Yeah, I mean, you could argue that you would maybe want a little bit more like legs in there between Kova and Gilmour, but I mean, it's kind
quality
of looking
at
at sort of what we have. It's the best that we have.
Exactly. Quality on the ball too.
Exactly.
That's beating the press constantly time and time again.
Yeah. And you're putting people, as you say, you're putting them in the right positions for them to succeed. I think, again, the reason that I think Kovacic, I think the general consensus is that Kovacic has been the player of the season. I have slightly different opinion on that because I expect someone of his ability to have like more assists or more output than like Azpilicueta, for example. So, I mean, just sort of laying the foundation there. But moving him, as you say, to the Kante slot where the expectation is more on his ability to press, to counter press, to be kind of a link between the defence and the attack, and not be the guy in the final third who's using the ball, playing the pass. I think that's huge. And I think there's a couple of times I can remember last season with him and Ruben playing together where the link up was amazing in the Europa League. So hoping that sort of combination play with someone like Gilmour, who's a little bit more of a kind of a riskier pass, or a little bit better at passing over range, and just finding those sort of spaces. That is a very interesting combination, particularly, as you say, if you've got, I think Pulisic is fit now, Hudson-Odoi potentially playing. You've got still, obviously, I don't know if Willian and Pedro will be here if they conclude after their contracts, but, and Tammy hopefully will be refreshed, So it's all of a sudden you've got a really, really interesting balance in the team.
Yeah, I think that's what this team's been screaming out for, is just a rest. Maybe this rest has been a bit too extended, but injuries were costing us fatigue. Players playing through the knocks too. I mean, that was what was affecting Tammy for like an entire month. Yeah. So, I'm really positive and optimistic about what's going to happen when the players return. But honestly, man, to end with the final point, I do want to speak briefly about our new summer signing, Hakim Ziyech. I'm really excited to see him play. I think he's going to do big things here. And I kind of feel like optimistic that he's going to have a similar type of like appearance, like when maybe like Massa first started playing for us, or Hazard, just like great debuts basically. I just feel confident that Ziyech is going to slot in seamlessly.
Yeah, I completely agree on that. So I think this season, the thing that we've lacked in that final third is someone who has the potential to sort of just take over games and just take over sort of kind of moments. And last season, full season, 19 goals, 16 assists. I mean, we haven't seen those kind of numbers really since Mata had that insane year. Even this season, I mean, he's well on course to score 10 goals. He's got 8 at the moment. Oh, no, the Dutch league's concluded, isn't it? So, yes, I mean, probably I would have said would have hit double figures in terms of goals, but also 17 assists. This is a guy for me who is a creative player, used to playing in a 4-3-3. Doesn't really conflict in terms of, some of our younger players, tend to want to play from the left-hand side, plays better from the right-hand side, can play as a number 10. But I just think his passing and the style of his assists, they're not just sort of little cutbacks and little tap-ins to someone who then is just sort of slotting it away. They're whip crosses, they're really, really difficult passes, and I can see sort of what the club are trying to achieve by getting him. And also as well, we've got an incredibly young team, particularly in that sort of the attacking group of players that we have. Having someone who's actually in their peak, sort of was he 27 Ziyech? I think he's a really good age for the next couple of years to sort of have in that kind of room with, the likes of Callum and Pulisic and others, because I think he will elevate their game as well by seeing what a top player does. I think he's, at least from what I've seen, good, really good set piece delivery as well if we need that.
Excellent,
But I mean, for me, it's just that I think that this is a guy that will get you 10 goals, 10 assists as the absolute minimum every single season. And, for a team that struggles to score and struggles to not doesn't necessarily struggle to create, I think from memory, he has a really, really high expected assist total. So he's obviously creating chances of high quality. Him whipping it into Tammy or whoever is going to be there.
It's going to be unreal, honestly. It's going to be
Yeah,
unreal.
it's going
That
to be
right hand
fantastic.
side with him and
With
Reece.
Reece James as well. I mean, that is,
How are you going to stop that right hand side? It's like Ziyech in the right channel, Reece James is like getting the freedom of space to do what he wants. Oh yeah, but if Lampard's the way he pulled off the signing, honestly, I'm very impressed. Very impressed with Ziyech. I think he is that maybe missing piece this team's needed. I think at times that right hand side has really caused us issues, and I guess Lampard's solution of having someone that can, play these dead balls from that area, maybe might be more effective for the team than signing someone that can like beat his man and get to the byline.
And I think the thing with Ziyech, and probably this is where kind of Willian is, when Willian has his like standard Willian games rather than sort of like peak Willian. He's, for me, the kind of critical difference is the time he takes on the ball, like slowing the game down. And I think what Ziyech does that's different is he's so direct. Like he wants to get the ball and he wants to like either get the ball in or he wants to do something immediately. There's not really kind of element with him of like slowing the game down. Like if you're Eden Hazard, you can do it because you can still beat 4 people and put a ball in. But Ziyech, wants to kind of take, he wants to take advantage of the fact that there's space and that he's received the ball and he's got time. He wants to play quickly. From that sort of Ajax system that we've seen have so much success over the past couple of seasons. And that for me is the exciting part, because I think finally they haven't just gone out and got someone who's a good player. They've actually kind of really thought about what is he going to add to the team. And your point about Reece James is spot on. Reece James, right foot dominant down the outside, will get to the byline and will put amazing crosses in from pretty much anywhere in the opponent's half. Ziyech cut in on that left foot, play passes, shoot, cross, whatever. All of a sudden, you've got a really massive overlapping threat and a huge kind of inside forward or underlapping threat. And we haven't had that on the right-hand side for ages. Yeah. It's always been a right-footed player.
For years. We haven't had any attacking threat down that side. So it's been surprising that we've been kind of successful at times. But yeah, I just think that, every point you said, obviously correct. I just think Ziyech, his ability to galvanize the team too is going to be good, because he's one of those guys that even if he's not playing his best game, he's going to produce 1 or 2 amazing moments that is going to do something for you. And I think that is just the difference that he has that maybe separates him from the very best which he's at compared to guys who are decent, Yeah, I just think that right inside the attacking threat and quality is just going to be completely unreal. And I'm just curious to see, do you think he'll be using like a 3-man mids, or we're going to see the, 4-2-3-1 formation used again?
Oof, that's a good question. I have a feeling that Lampard wants to be a 4-3-3 dominant team. And I think the Ziyech being the first signing was probably one of the biggest kind of telltale signs that that's what he wants to do. He wants kind of he doesn't really want wingers. He wants kind of inside forwards. So he'll have a right footer on the left, and I think he's obviously got his left footer now to play from the right. He wants them to cut in. He wants them to shoot. He wants them to look for those little passes in the channels, but then maintaining width with a Reece James and potentially someone probably that they're going to buy on the left-hand side to really kind of stretch teams out now. You're going to have width really. It's going to come, I would imagine, predominantly from the fullbacks. Yeah. And then you're going to have the kind of creative outlet being probably your left central midfielder, potentially Ruben when he's fully fit. And then you'll have, Hudson-Odoi, Pulisic, whoever on the left, probably Ziyech on the right for the time being, and then whoever is going to be the striker up front. But then, really stretching the play, using the width with the fullbacks and actually having fullbacks that can deliver, having players in those kind of half channels either side of the kind of the D on the penalty area, sort of being your Callums and your Ziyech's. That's really what I think he's going for. And then I think some games he will just use a 4-2-3-1 because I think it will match up with the opposition. I think sometimes, probably when we're in Europe, he might use that and use more of a defensive 10. Maybe he'll put Mason Mount in there for his pressing and just his general kind of work rate as a number 10, and then be a little bit more defensive and a bit more solid. But I think certainly Ziyech, for me, is the first sign we've made in ages that actually gives us opportunities to change formation based on who we're playing, but not just doing it because the players don't fit any system. I think that this is a really calculated move to enable us to play 2 shapes really well and really strongly, and play them differently. Play on the counter, play defensive, but also play on the front foot.
Yeah, I think that's why I'm really excited by the type of team that Frank's building. And maybe just to end, the final few minutes, speaking briefly about like transfer speculation, in the market. Due to obviously the pandemic, is this going to affect maybe some of the deals that we're hoping to do? Are we going to like maybe change our strategy to maybe focus on players that are just key for certain positions and maybe look to the January window to like finish off the business we start?
I think we are in probably a lot better position than a lot of clubs at the moment. I think that's fairly yeah. I mean, I don't want to say that's fairly well known, but I think from a financial perspective, we're better off than the most. I think this summer, the transfers that we buy, I think maybe you'll see us getting players in for probably better fees than what they were reported, certainly in January. I can see the club being very aggressive and taking advantage of the fact that actually, you know what, we've got the Morata money coming, we've got all this other sort of money coming in. We are pretty stable financially compared to certainly even clubs around us, Liverpool and others will struggle for sort of, kind of funds this summer. So I think hopefully that they'll look at that, and then this will be the kind of summer where they actually look to press on a bit and close that gap between us and Liverpool and City. So, yeah, I mean, I think that you'll see probably maybe 4 or 5 players coming in, and the usual kind of replacements for those who have left, sort of to replace maybe with a bit more of a squad type player. But certainly think that we'll be in the market for 4 or 5 players. I don't imagine it's going to be sort of 5 absolute superstars. Maybe as you say, they'll push for a Havertz or someone of that sort of quality as a really young superstar kind of talent. But I wouldn't expect all 4 or 5 of them to be sort of that kind of signing. But I think this is a summer that Chelsea hopefully invest and show Lampard that they believe in him and the project that he's trying to build. Because certainly the club are in a position financially to do so, and it makes sense if other clubs can't really afford to buy as much because they've been impacted by the situation, the pandemic a lot more than us. It's it's not a great way to get sort of a foot up, but business is business. So I think that hopefully that Chelsea will kind of step on the accelerator and realise that maybe they can close this gap a little bit more quickly than they could have a few years ago.
Exactly. Especially our situation is much better when it comes to securing Champions League football. If you're Man United, things are looking quite ropey. If you don't get that Champions League spot, that's really going to affect their business, because that's going to be like a huge loss financially. So we could be in an even better situation. And I'm just curious to know about maybe the key signings we're going to make. Obviously at left back, there's been so much speculation. But speaking, we've spoken about Sandro, we've spoken about Tagliafico, we've spoken about Telles, Goossens, whatever his name is. So many players and options down that left-hand side. But maybe it's starting to feel like we're starting to whittle down now to our final 2 targets, like a Telles and Tagliafico. Do you think maybe these signings compared to the options out there are like the best ones to go for? Or was there like a player maybe out there who maybe caught your eye, you're kind of disappointed that we didn't get?
I think at the moment, unless you have somehow lucked into signing someone like Alphonso Davies or one of these sort of random Canadian guys that sort of you're bringing in as a winger, and then Sonny turns out to be a world-class fullback. I don't think that there are many that, at least, when I've been sort of looking, jump out on the page and you think, this is an absolute must-have, sort of fits the age criteria. I think Telles and Tagliafico, they make sense. Maybe Tagliafico because he, for me, is a slightly better defender. I think Telles is probably the better footballer, if that makes sense. Like he's great in terms of his passing and movement and actually sort of the way that he plays the game. Like he has sort of a bit more of a midfielder skill set playing fullback. Not saying Tagliafico is a bad player by any stretch of the imagination, but I see Telles as being a little bit better footballer. Maybe Tagliafico is the better defender. So it kind of depends on sort of the balance that you want there. But narrowing it down to those 2, which it seems to be in terms of the sort of chatter, I would be quite happy with either. I think Telles gives you a possibility of 2, 3, maybe 4 seasons of really good level football. Then maybe you bring in, as you say, another fullback from the academy potentially. Tagliafico, I think, would just be a great day one starter, and I think he locks that position down for a while.
Yeah, I think so too. I just think having him alongside Ziyech is going to be better for both players to acclimatise, and they both speak English. I think the price too, it feels like it would make a lot of sense. And again, I'm just really hoping that that's the style of fullback we go for. Because I mean, Tagliafico can still put a cross in and still get inside the box.
Yeah.
It's not as if he's just like an Aspilicueta left back, you know. But yeah, exactly. But interesting news just came out recently from Italy in regards to Jorginho. As you guys can see on screen right now, let me make that a little bit bigger for you guys. Yeah, so it looks like we've set an asking price of about 35 million for Jorginho. And maybe Juventus now are after the player. 35 million is like a bit too low, or does this like maybe make a bit more sense?
So I think, I mean, without getting too much into sort of the financial accounting of it, but I think that probably puts Chelsea at a very small profit on the transfer. So after the amortization, all that kind of stuff that's kicked in, probably a really, really small profit. So what do we pay for, like 58, something like that?
Yeah, like 50, it was like 54, 58 mil. But I
10,
think it had
11.6.
like clauses, right? So I guess maybe those clauses weren't met. Maybe it didn't really cost us that much.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, actually, I think you're right. Yeah, I think that was the absolute top end. So yeah, I mean, I felt for a while that I think Lampard, if he wants that style of player, you know, Billy Gilmour does it at sort of, you know, 10% of the costs for the next couple of years in terms of, you know, contract, even if he has a contract extension, etc. You know, lots of talk about Jorginho wanting to move back to Italy. You know, anecdotally that he's not quite settled in the Premier League. Would prefer to go. And obviously, if you want a Italian player, then Juventus is kind of the guys that you want to go and play for. So I can see it happening. And also, I mean, you have to I would probably say take into account as well that this summer, the transfer fees that we've seen kind of floating around, you know, the 80 mils for like a good player, I think that's going to come way down just because the money in football at the moment is it's not dry, but I mean, you know, you don't have the availability to go and spend 80, 90 million pounds on a midfielder if you're Juventus or some other clubs now that have been more effective than that. So it seems fairly, I would say probably fairly even kind of money. I think Chelsea probably would take that. And again, if they're looking at other midfielders, again, I think it's certainly an interesting move. But I think Gilmour, you know, he's only played a handful of games, but for that style of midfielder, you know,
I mean, he suits it more. I mean, Jorginho, I think everyone still refers to Jorginho as a regista, and I've been trying to say the whole season, he hasn't been used that way. He's been used as a deep line playmaker the whole time. He hasn't been used as a regista. We're not using a three-man midfield in that way. And it's obvious that maybe that part of the game, it becomes more expensive, and your pass selection has to be a lot sharper and quicker, and, you know, you have to be spraying passes with more urgency and with better weight and quality. You know, I think at times, you know, too often there's like a lack of weight behind his passes. And I guess if you're like a short passing player, maybe that passing technique is much better in shorter distances. But whenever he has to apply that to like a, I don't know, 20-meter vertical pass, there's like a bit of, you never feel super confident that he's going to find that player.
No, I agree. And I think certainly one of the things that always amuses me is you see these, Jorginho stolen assist clips on Twitter doing the rounds.
I think I saw one of them recently. It's just like, I get that you can have love for a player, but come on, it's just like a season's worth of clips that happen like maybe like a few in like 4 or 5 games, and it's just like, what, 2 minutes? That's all you could find? Like,
yeah. I think the thing that always interests me is that when I watch these clips, I mean, you know, we're talking about his passing ability. You've got overhit passes, you've got underhit passes. You know, it's I mean, the connection that people make that just because someone's through and goal. I mean, you know, if you're going to clip a ball over the top, it's got to be so someone can run onto it at a pace. You know, not have to check their run, not be pulled back by a defender. There's loads of stuff that comes into play. But I mean, as a sort of a mid to long range passer, you know, he doesn't have the ability to punch a ball. And also, I just think sometimes his direction on passes is a bit strange. I think he's almost too mindful of his pass completion percentage. I know that he came out and defended his sort of self by actually referring to statistics. So he's obviously looking at football Twitter a fair bit. But you know, for someone who, for me, is more concerned like playing to feet rather than sort of playing to a position to give someone a bit more of an opportunity to do something with the ball. But Gilmour is certainly for me a better passer. Both I would say short because I think he gives people a better chance to do something with the ball, but also sort of long range as well.
Yeah, you know, I believe that's the case too. For me, you know, Jorginho playing as, you know, his game, you know, it suits like a Sarri type of system. You know, of course, it's about the tempo setting as well, because it's all about creating those openings to those like vertical runs. So you need someone that is comfortable, maybe, you know, playing a lot of dangerous passes in that area, But Jorginho is very good at doing it as a regista. I think he's a top quality one. But again, you know, it brings up an article that I've read today on The Athletic, and it was in regards to Liam Bridcut. You know, Liam Bridcut, the guy that, from our academy, you know, he was playing under Gus Poyet at Brighton. And, you know, he maybe he didn't have the career that a lot of people expected him to. And I really like the article because it touched upon a lot of things that we've had discussions about on stream. About when you sign players, how are you using them? And how are you going to try to get the best out of them? And it seems like whenever Bridcut was using a similar Jorginho role, where he's able to like move back into the back three and, you know, move the ball out from danger and be the one to receive it from the centre backs, top class, amazing. And Gus Poyet was even making relations like, yo, I could see this guy playing at Real Madrid. However, of course, you know, a lot of teams he signed for had a lot of managerial changes. And
he signed for Sunderland.
exactly. And that's obviously when Poyet left too, it didn't help in his favour. And other managers aren't trying to play football like that. And I think maybe this is why, could this be one of the reasons why Jorginho might be going for 35 mil? Because he's a very niche player. He's not a player that will ever really be in high demands. And I guess if Juventus under Sarri want him, and maybe you feel like, you know, he is replaceable in the future, 35 mil makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. And I think your point about sort of teams, but I think maybe also sort of leagues as well is very important. You know, I think the thing that I look at when I look at Jorginho, and people, it's one of the things that people always try and pick me up on at least on Twitter and things like that, is sort of, you know, an emphasis on physicality. And, you know, as much as people want to sort of mock it and all this sort of stuff here, you have to be able to compete physically in the Premier League. And to have someone, as you say, I mean, he's not played as a regista. You know, there are games this season where he's not even been a deep line playmaker. He is just a defensive midfielder. Yeah. And if you are going to play as certainly as a player, you know, by themselves as a sort of single screening player, you have to in the Premier League be able to play sideline to sideline and have the athleticism to cover fullbacks and to cover space and even, you know, the basics. And this is one of the things that I know we often talk about with John Obi Mikel was his ability to hold up counterattacks. You know, people always talk about, you know, being able to win tackles, etc. What John Obi Mikel was fantastic at doing was stepping out of his position and instead of, you know, getting bypassed, which is what we see so often with Jorginho and actually other players on our midfield, is actually holding the ball, holding the pass up for 5 seconds, letting other players fill in. You know, so that there's certain things which we just don't really see, and I think you have to have in the Premier League. And it's no coincidence to me that, you know, Liverpool, best team in the country this season, have a distinctive defensive midfielder. City have had Fernandinho for however many years. All really top teams have a defensive-minded player in that position to let other players play. And we can talk about different styles of football and wanting to play better football and all this sort of stuff, etc., etc., etc. But historically, the best Premier League teams have had a top defensive midfielder who gets the ball, wins, you know, breaks up play, is physical, wins the battle midfield, and then plays the ball to better players. You know, Fernandinho gets the ball, he gives it to David Silva and Kevin De Bruyne. City win the title. You know, if they had, you know, they've brought in a guy this season, Rodri, he's a good player, but all of a sudden there's now a massive gap between them and City and them and Liverpool. Sorry, and I'm not saying it's exclusively down to one player. But Fernandinho, you know, he's old now. He's had a drop in form, etc. I think that having a physical player there is for me historically and probably will be going forward a better option.
Yeah, exactly. I just think that is the reality. Again, I don't think this is like a case of Jorginho not being good enough. You know,
no, exactly.
It just comes down to obviously we want to use our midfield in a different way now, and now maybe it's not the best way for Jorginho, and obviously that's the case because there's no way we've seen so many reports over the months with Jorginho, his agent, and Juventus. So it seems like it's something that they're hoping does come into fruition now, and obviously now Juventus have to set the agency and obviously cough the money up to sign him. So again, this puts us in an even better situation where, you know, we are going to have even more funds to spend money on. So I'm quite excited to see what's going to be happening. And man, I think on that point, it's probably a good time to wrap things up. I know you guys, I said that we were going to do a Q&A, but I think maybe doing that for a separate occasion would be best because this stream will go on for time. And I know that a lot of people who like to watch the streams back again, it might be a bit too ambitious for them. So, Yeah, Joe, obviously, thanks for coming on, man. Always very good to have you on. And we have to do this a lot more often because, you know, I just feel like anytime you speak about football, magic happens.
I agree. Yeah. No, it's just I'm. Well, I was going to say I'm pretty free at the moment, but I think most people in the world are. So yeah.
Amazing.
It takes your mind off of things for a good hour or two, which is always fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. And I will be taking advantage of that too, because I know you're a very busy guy. So it's just like prime time. But and honestly, you guys, you know, obviously, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I hope you guys took something from the stream. And yeah, expect there to be a Q&A for tomorrow. So I'm gonna just move the Q&A to tomorrow. That'll be its own separate thing around the same time too. So I hope you guys are gonna join me for that. And on that note, I'm gonna wrap things up and keep things moving. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I'm EFC. This is Blue Lions TV. I'll see you guys later with some more videos.